what have you. But now it's more balanced. Now it was more of a 65-35, a 65-40. And that's based on what I got in that area, what Lee Zeldin got in that area, what Curtis Sliwa got in that area, and what composes the new 38. So the new 38 is basically Red Hook, Sunset Park, like I said, Dyker Heights, and bits of Borough Park, Bath Beach, and a lot of the big Asian areas. So now it's a district that is about 35 to 40% Hispanic, about 1/3 white, and white is sort of this desperate because it could be the Italians or Irish or even the Middle Eastern people in the Dyker Heights area, along with a lot of Orthodox Jews, Eastern Europeans in Borough Park, along with the hipsters in Red Hook, of course. And then about 25% Asian, and then the remainder African American or what have you. But what is it that really kind of brought me forth to run? Yes, it's winnable, but why beyond that? I am facing now, the person who is my representative is not Justin Brannan, who, as bad as he is still not a democratic socialist. So I'm running against a woman named Alexa Aviles, who is in her first term, who is, mind you, we sometimes call her the AOC of Brooklyn, or Tiffany Pagan's blood sister. She is someone who's entirely and wholeheartedly dedicated to the Democratic Socialists of America. She's very proud. She doesn't shy away from it. She recently posted something on Instagram about going to one of her parents' groups, and I kid you not, it was called Comrades with Children. I kid you not. She's someone who, to this day, even though the subway shooting happened in our district, in the 38th district, is still very much adamant about defunding the police. And not just defunding the police, because the slogan of the DSA of their supposedly racial justice group is defund, disarm, abolish the police. And she wants to close down all the jails, not just Rikers, but all of them. She wants to replace them all with social workers and I guess drug addiction counselors or what have you. As if somehow criminals will one day get an epiphany and say, oh, you know what? We don't need to commit crimes anymore. Now it's interesting because last week I had a fundraiser and I had Assemblyman Alec Brooks Krasny come to me and says, oh, Paul, you don't understand. That is what Marxism teaches, that if you get rid, I mean, literally, this is a man who came from the Soviet Union and said that's actually comes from Marxism, that somehow if you get rid of the jails and the police and everything, that somehow in this wonderful Marxist socialist utopia, the criminals will all of a sudden say, no more, I don't need to do anything anymore. So this is the absurdity. But keep in mind, Alexa Aviles, what are the other areas? And most of these issues we agree with, so I'm going to take a step back from them. But for example, education. I think most of us agree that we believe in merit-based education. We believe that we should support also parochial education in the different communities, not try to, under some bogus argument of the separation of church and state, that we cannot have Catholic schools or yeshivas or that type of thing. I think we can all agree that the migrant situation has been very badly handled, that it's very easy to advocate for open borders and for sanctuary city status for migrants coming in when you're thousands of miles away from the southern border and you feel that you're going to be shielded from any consequence of that position. But when all of a sudden it's in your face, all of these elected officials, including my opponent, all they could do is basically deflect blame, say, hey, we're compassionate, but deflect blame and blame it on Washington. And Washington most certainly is to blame, yes, because President Biden, out of spite, purely out of spite and pettiness, reversed all of these policies that his predecessor had put in place, including the stay in Mexico provision for people seeking asylum, so that they could stay there while their cases were being heard and not come here en masse in this sort of uncontrolled situation that we have now. So these are the things, obviously, I think we mostly all agree on. that are being pushed by particularly these socialists. And one of the cruel ironies, as I was mentioned, a lot of these migrants that are coming here are from Venezuela. Venezuelan people who actually left because they didn't want socialism, because it destroyed their country. And mind you, it was democratic socialism because Hugo Chavez, at least the first time, maybe even the second, some people say, was elected democratically, right? But he completely destroyed that country, and his predecessor has all of the negatives of Chavez and none of the charisma or the red beret. And I write courtesy about that once in a while, about the red beret. You know, I told them, Chavez used to go out in a suit to get elected first of all president. It was only later that he started wearing his beret. But so the point being, this cruel irony that then they come here and the people who are supposedly opening their arms to them are the very people who want to say, who look at Venezuela and say, that's what I want. I don't want one here. So I want to turn this country into the same hellhole, pardon the expression, that of the country they came from. Not because the country's unbeautiful, it's a beautiful country, I love it, but the people who govern it have destroyed so much of what made it such a vibrant place. So the real struggle that I see here, beyond the specific local issues, and something that is of a lot of significance specifically to these districts, but a few of the other districts that we're running in for city council, including Astoria with Tiffany Caban, I don't know the number of the district, is that what we're seeing really right now is not the typical struggle of Democrat versus Republican, or even liberal versus conservative. It's really these radical socialists that are increasingly taking over the Democratic Party versus the rest of us people who consider ourselves common sense. And that's not just Republicans, conservatives, independents, libertarians. It includes common sense moderate Democrats and even increasingly liberal Democrats who are feeling disaffected by their own party, who may not necessarily wake up one day and say, I'm going to vote Republican, but they'll certainly stay home. And in fact, let them stay home. If they're not going to vote the right way, let them stay home. But that's what we're facing. And we have seen, aside from the absurdity that is to have democratic socialism, as you know, keep in mind, a socialist is not a liberal. We often throw these words around, and they've been so hyperbolized. Not just socialism, but genocide, sexist, racist, all these words that seem to have lost their meaning. But keep in mind, these socialists, they're not very liberal people. They're not progressives. They have a very particular worldview which is at odds with the values that this country was founded on, which can be basically put down to this. This country was founded on the idea of equality of opportunity, on respect for the individual, of each of our own abilities to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's something that the government didn't hand to us. Those are rights that we're born with, not like every other imagined natural right that the left likes to come up with. Those are the most basic rights. But what they believe is an equality of outcome, which may sound very utopian, very nice, except until you realize that equality of outcome for them should come at any cost. No matter how much coercion, no matter how much violence you have to employ, and typically that outcome is not lifting everyone up, it's typically bringing everybody down. And that's sort of really the difference between an American worldview, the values that make this country strong, where we worship, if you go, we worship God and respect the individual. They worship the state and respect the collective. And that's what we're seeing more and more. And even Democrats, I'm not saying that they all got up one day like I was mentioning and decided, oh, I guess I think I'll vote Republican today. No, it's that they're realizing, hang on, some of these things seem kind of innocuous, but more and more and more, you're pushing me to the edge. And this Democratic Socialists of America, the biggest manifestation of that recently has been their wholehearted, adamant support of all of these celebrations of what Hamas did last week. When those organizations first organized that first rally, it was the DSA of New York City who was basically promoting it to everyone and celebrating it. But of course, I guess many of them didn't expect that there would be such a negative reaction from so many people here, even in New York. So most of those politicians, even the ones who are active members of the DSA, have kept quiet. Of course, except my opponent, who to this day will still not condemn Hamas, will not condemn all the attacks. And again, they get into the same tropes of, oh, it's apartheid and anti-colonialism. Yes, because the Jews who founded the state of Israel, who built and established Jerusalem, are actually colonizers in their own ancestral homeland. And mind you, you don't even have to get theological about it. Just look at the history. Long before there were Arabs, long before there were Persians, long before there were Turks, long before there was any other people, it was the Jews. And mind you, this is often used, criticism of Israel is a veiled way that is often used to really just put out anti-Semitic feelings. Because when you really get down to it, and when you look at from the river to the sea, it's not simply about political criticism or policy disagreements. It's about eradicating a particular group of people that for whatever reason you've been indoctrinated since you were a kid, whether you feel it's justified or not, they believe that they don't have the right to exist or coexist with you. And you've heard that where it's been said, I don't remember who said it, but they say if the Arabs put down their weapons, we would have peace. If the Jews put down their weapons, we'd have no Jews. And this is why you cannot necessarily negotiate against a foe who doesn't believe that you have the right to exist, because then you can't really come to peace. Why haven't we had a two-state solution? It isn't because we haven't tried. It's because it's been rejected at every point in time. But again, putting aside, the point is, this whole situation has highlighted even further how toxic the Democratic Socialists of America are, and all of their members who are in it, including, again, one of the poster childs of the Democratic Socialists of America, my opponent, Alexa Avilés. So don't take this election for granted. Yes, it is an off-year election. It's off year because there's no governor, no mayor, no president elected, and it's even a further off year because it's after 2 years, not 4, and it's due to only redistricting. But don't just simply assume that it's not important. It's really going to come down to turnout. Excuse me, to turnout. So there isn't as much motivating the other side to turn out, but if we have a chance of picking up, we have one of the best chances with Ying, with I, in Astoria, of picking off some of these seats, because the other side is basically lulled into their own security that, hey, no one's going to turn out. We don't need to turn out. The Working Families Party doesn't need to be out there. But who knows, they might be. They don't feel threatened. But for us, we have to show how important, and if we really want to make some changes, we have to turn out. But we have to tell everybody from here to November 4th, and I used to, November 7th, excuse me. And I used to tell people last year, and think even a week beyond, because you don't know what shenanigans can come from the other side. And particularly local elections is where it really happens, where it's just a few dozen votes could really make the difference, right? So please, from now until November 7th, you need to go out, tell everybody you know. If you happen to be in my district, I don't think many of you are, but if you happen to be in my district, remind them you're not really represented by Justin Brannan. As bad as he is, you're represented by a socialist who seems to be perfectly happy with what's going on in the world, in the Middle East, who doesn't support the police, doesn't support business owners. In Sunset Park, you have a lot of, obviously it's a large population of Mexicans, so give you an example. Let's say you own a taqueria. You pay rent, you pay, you pay a lease, you pay insurance, you have to pay all these licenses, all these things to have this business that you're working very hard. You might have come from Puebla, worked hard, build this family business, put it here. But now let's say someone wants to open a street vendor wants to sell some tamales right in front of your establishment. Why? Because a lot of Mexicans go there. So why not do it? all of a sudden that street vendor is cannibalizing your business. And most of the time they're unlicensed street vendors. But what happens? They go to their local elected officials, they go to people like Alexa, or to their assemblywoman, Marcela Mitaines, who's another DSA member, and say, hey, can you help me do something about this? Not that I have anything against them personally, but you know, I've worked very hard. I'm trying to make a living, and these people don't have to pay any of the things that I have to pay, and they're taking advantage, taking business away from me. And what do they hear from the ex-politicians? Well, you know, she's a survivor of domestic violence. How incompassionate can you be? What's wrong with you? And then, of course, they get disarmed and go, hey, it's not that I'm against her, but understand, these people don't have any sympathy or understanding, or frankly, any concern for what business owners, for homeowners have to go through. Because again, it's not part of their worldview. Ultimately, they want, you know, dismantle capitalism, get rid of private ownership of homes, get rid of private ownership of businesses, and just think about the collective, and then tell you everywhere to live in these big tenement buildings. Does this sound ridiculous to you? Does it sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist? It might, if it weren't for the fact that that's exactly what they say they want to do. And you know, the internet is forever. I didn't have to go very far to find videos of Miss Aviles saying stuff like this. So, and mind you, she's got a smile, and she's got a mild-mannered demeanor. So when she says this, it makes it seem like it's so nice and wonderful. Kind of like that rose logo of the DSA. You know, the rose may be better than the hammer and sickle. And I used to say the rose. But I started thinking about it, and the metaphor is actually quite apt. The rose from far away looks beautiful, flawless, perfect. But as soon as you try to get closer to it and try to touch it, the thorns will stick into you, will stab you, will cut you, and leave you a bloody mess. Pretty much the same as socialism. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you all. Please vote. Remember, I forgot to tell you just real quick. I have some palm cards back there, but my website is Rodriguez4nyc.com. So that's Rodriguez, RODRIGUEZ, and then FORNYC.com. Rodriguez for NYC is also my Instagram, my Facebook, and my Twitter, Twitter X. So please come out, check me out, follow me. If you want to make a donation, I appreciate it. If you want to give me a cash donation now, I have it. So any questions you may have?
Yeah, any questions from the audience?
Yes, sir.
It's not really a question, it's a suggestion for everybody in this room. We have a chance to build a coalition of South Brooklyn council members. There's 51 seats, and we only have 5 of them right now. We have a chance to build on that. We could have as many as 9. And I'm a long-time volunteer for Nicole Maliotakis. And she really has no use for me. Her re-election is almost reassured, but her representative called me and said, we need Harry Kagan in there. Got to beat Brannon. She's pushing hard for that. So she's got me making phone calls. And this is what I'm saying to everybody else. Find a representative who needs it. Just pick out somebody and start making phone calls for them. They'll deliver to you the rolls from the voter rolls. They have lists of phone numbers, and you just keep calling them and calling them, reminding them that November 7th is election day. Please get out and vote for said candidate. And you know, maybe you can get them to take an absentee ballot or whatever. But the best thing you can do is get them on the phone and say vote on November 7th. You know. That's what everybody should do. Get on the freaking phone. We need you.
Because people, frankly, don't realize. So most of them, if they know there's an election at all, they don't realize. They still think they're being represented by other people. So you mentioned Ari Kagan. Right around the corner from where I live, there's someone with an Ari Kagan lawn sign and another lawn sign that says, Justin Brannon voted to defund the police. And I say, great, he definitely is in sync with me. But I knocked on his door, haven't been able to talk to him, he wasn't there, and left. Knocked on his door, let him know, by the way, You think you're being represented by Justin Brannan, you actually are not
Justin
anymore.
Brannan is an old rock star wannabe. He wanted